Are you not entertained by this yellow light we're using, which means we today watch Gladiator II. So Aiden, what's the plot of Gladiator II?
Gladiator II picks up 20 years after Gladiator. I kind of assumed walking into this that it'd be like a fucking... just like another movie about gladiators, but it's actually a sequel. Where through a contrived series of happenings, Maximus, aka Russell Crowe's son Lucius, flees to Africa and becomes a soldier, and then the Roman Empire raids his village and kills his wife and puts him in the gladiator arena where his father fought. And convoluted drama plays out where the guy who killed his wife is his new stepdad, and he meets his mom, and stuff happens, and then there's a lot of gladiator fighting, and Denzel Washington plays a sassy gay man who tries to take over the Roman Empire.
Yeah.
You can pretty much just put the rest of the pieces together from there. Connor, what'd you think of Gladiator II?
Gladiator II, for a modern Ridley Scott movie, was pretty alright. It's pretty much a retread of the original.
Yep.
But ends a little happier, I guess. So basically there's this guy that kind of looks like Russell Crowe, and he runs around and he's captured and they make him a gladiator. And then Russell Crowe's baby mama from the first movie keeps looking concerned and having flashback of her kid. And you're like, oh, so it's Russell Crowe's kid or something?
Yep.
And yes, it was Russell Crowe's kid. It was pretty well telegraphed. And then his stepdad, Pedro Pascal's like, well, we're going to overthrow the government and shit. And then Pedro Pascal dies. But, you know, for the most part, it's the same idea. It's like human drama. Just, you know, the old humans hanging out, having drama. And then it cuts to gladiator epic scenes. I will say one thing that I kind of need to criticize about this movie is I think he wanted to go bigger. And bigger for someone Ridley Scott's age means CGI. And old people apparently can't discern when the CGI isn't up to par. I just don't think it was in the budget with 1,000 million extras and everything to have the CGI. So all the CGI looked kind of choppy. Yeah, but everything looked like it was filmed in a warehouse. Like I think they turned some warehouse and a California hillside 3 miles from Ridley Scott's house into ancient Rome.
Yep.
And I mean, there's some good sets and good practical stuff, but even like the blood and gore is CGI, which makes it a little less visceral.
Yeah.
Like there's parts that is supposed to be like visceral violence, and you like start seeing someone like get stabbed in close up, and it really wouldn't have been that hard to like have them shoot blood effects, but instead, out of simplicity, they made it CGI. So there was always an air of fakiness to it. The story also just felt really grand. Like, not that the first Gladiator didn't, but there was kind of a thesis to it, and then it's like, well, then Russell Crowe dies and nothing really happened, but wasn't it cool that he was sort of a martyr for nothing? And then this guy becomes a fucking superhero, and the main characters are all amazing fighters for the point of plot convenience. Like, fine, Russell Crowe's son's an amazing fighter, but, like, Denzel Washington is, like, killing numerous people. Pedro Pascal is able to body, like, 6 guys at once without an issue. When they're in battles, it kind of has that Lord of the Rings thing, where they don't even really look. They're just kind of walking around and, like, 2/ killing everybody.
Yep.
Which I think is fine in something like Lord of the Rings, because it's fantasy, you know? Not real. Not that this is real, but, you know, the idea of, like, Rome and stuff, it's, like, historical fiction.
Yep.
So you would think they would try to ground it somewhat in reality.
Cartoon.
It's very much a fucking action movie. Like, you're not going to be going here for like, well, in Rome, some people were just so fucking jacked they were like having no problem and suffer no physical strain as they kill numerous people or like a fucking rhino or something. Like,
And Russell Crowe's son takes down a rhino. We don't get to see him fight a tiger though, but we do get to see the tiger, the famous tiger.
Russell Crowe's son's also kind of a Gary Stu because no one kills him because he has plot armor. And he's like he's like, go fuck yourself, bitch, to like the king, and he's like a slave, and it's like, this is the most tyrannical, evil dictator who kill anybody, these two homosexual brothers. Everybody in this movie who's gay is also a horrible tyrant. But I think Ridley Scott's like, we need to add some gay characters. People were really gay in Rome and Greece and shit. And it's like, yes, this is true. It was a little weird that then the straight good guys would be like the fucking deviants over here. It was a little weird.
Those weird sex guys.
Those weird sex deviants, and then like the fucking the twin that was homosexual has like a fucking ball gag in his mouth and a 24-inch dildo hanging out his ass or something. It's like, what the fuck? And he's hanging out with like two twinks on fucking leashes, and it's just kind of weird.
And then Denzel's running around like...
Denzel Washington's like, I like humping boys sometimes because what's the difference?
Yeah.
An asshole's an asshole, and it's like, okay, bro. And he's like sniffing weird old fat dudes and shit, and it's kind of odd.
I do love Denzel. Yeah.
Also, I don't really see like Denzel's plan and trajectory. Like, Denzel Washington's like, okay, I'm some fucking guy from out of town who used to be a Roman slave, and I bought my freedom, but so I buy a slave who happens to be Russell Crowe from Gladiator's son, and he's a really good fighter, and then he's like, he would be the right age to be Russell Crowe's son. So he knows that it's Russell Crowe's son. So then
at a certain point,
somehow he becomes homies with like the kings and shit, and they're all hanging out, and he's like, you just gotta kill your brother, dude.
Yeah.
But then the gay one is so gay and scared that he's like hiding under the carpet or whatever, and he's like, I'll do whatever you say, Denzel. It was kind of weird.
Well, then his plan after that doesn't get any better, because he's like, okay, now I'm gonna tie up Russell Crowe's wife and have the king convince the king to kill her. Then I'll kill the king after that because everyone will hate him for killing Russell Crowe's wife. And then everyone will like me and I'll be the emperor.
Denzel's plan is also entirely contingent on Russell Crowe's son having plot armor, because his plan is that he's gonna sell out Pedro Pascal because he heard through the grapevine that there's a revolution.
Well, he only learned that. That's only something he learns because he won a bunch of bets until he owned a guy who happened to know the plan because of a contrived series of things.
Right, but he suspected the plan, but then he knew the plan, so then he sells out Pedro Pascal, who the kings are like, well, I'm just gonna fucking kill him, and then Denzel Washington's like, why not make him fight in a gladiator fight? Because, like, people would get really mad if you just, like, hung him or something. And the kings are like, why? And he's like, I don't know. They're not, he was like, a lot of people like him or something. So I guess, like, him getting murdered by a bunch of slaves is probably the ideal way to save face on this. So they put him in the gladiator arena.
Well, no, because he wanted everyone to hate the emperors and blame his death on them because they liked him.
Right.
Which is also...
No, that was part of his plan, but what he convinced the Empire... the plan was contingent on the Emperors being stupid, but then they go in there, and then for some reason, Gladiator's son needed to win because he was the ultimate champion, which would bring public support to Denzel Washington. So when the Emperor sent like 8 dudes at Pedro Pascal, it was expected and needed that he would single-handedly kill all 8 of them. And then he'd do a 1v1 against his stepson, Russell Crowe's son. And then Pedro Pascal has to hush up about the fact that he obviously knows, based on the fact that he was holding a rescue for his stepson, that it's his stepson, and they weren't allowed to talk, because the fact that they were able to talk is what sent Russell Crowe's son's plan in motion.
Well, yeah, but then also... It's also contingent on... Denzel's plan is also contingent on Russell Crowe's son not still wanting revenge against Pedro Pascal. Like, he forgives him, and then they kill Pedro Pascal.
But then...
And he gives, like, a big rousing speech that makes all the people hate the Emperor.
Well, then the really
And if he
risky
just killed him
thing-
himself, then he probably wouldn't have given that rousing speech.
Right, because he needed to give the rousing speech. But then apparently Denzel Washington had a different plan, because then he tells Russell Crowe's son that he's mad that he went off script. So, I don't know. But then his plan still goes to plan, because everybody hates the two emperors, and they're like, what the hell are we going to do? And then Denzel's had to... He knew that the gay one was mentally ill or something like that, and that the more sane one was just more unhinged. So then he had to go into the gay emperor's room and be like, you know what? Your brother hates you for being gay, and like he steals all your shit. Doesn't that make you mad? And it had to have pissed off that one enough that he was willing to kill his other brother so that he could become the sole king. And then since the one is so mentally ill, he then had to crown the monkey the true king and Denzel the second in command, and his power is figurative, which then allows him to, I guess,
the
like,
Emperor and
throw
take
a
over.
festival where he would show his true power by killing the emperor. And then, but then they also he didn't really account for the contingency of the uprising that was happening right out there. But then he's able to mobilize like 6,000 troops in like 2 seconds anyways. But then everyone's just like, I guess Denzel Washington has to get in a gladiator match with Russell Crowe Jr. So it's kind of a very convoluted plot when you think about
It's
it.
very contrived.
There's a lot of shit where shit just kind of happens. I think kind of as we just illustrated there, the plot is kind of a run-on sentence to usher us between fight sequences.
Yeah.
And I also think there was probably too much plot. Like, I think the movie could have been 2 hours, but the first one was 2.5 hours, so Ridley Scott made this one 2.5 hours.
Yep.
And I don't know. Like, I don't know if it was supposed to be a twist that he's Gladiator's son. Gladiator II. But I don't know. It's kind of weird. It just falls in the realm of the Legacy sequel where you're like, oh, Ridley Scott did it again, and then you nod your head and you're like, I'm gonna forget about this movie in a week, and if I ever feel the need,
tiger again.
like it's like, oh, but again, you know, like I didn't think Gladiator needed a but again. Because it's a pretty open and shut case.
I honestly, walking into this, I genuinely assumed that this wouldn't be a Legacy sequel and it'd just be like another Gladiator story, because that's what makes the most sense.
I thought he was just remaking the movie, except it would be like 100 years before Russell Crowe, the same thing happened.
Yeah,
isn't that weird?
That's what I expected.
that's what I expected.
But what we got was 30 years after Russell Crowe's son comes back from Africa to take over Rome by killing
not really
a sassy
on
black
purpose.
gay man.
He's forced to go back to Rome because
his
he's
stepdad
kidnapped
comes
by
to
his
destroy.
stepdad in a tragedy.
It's very convoluted.
But his stepdad's really sad about it too.
Yeah, his stepdad did it sadly. He kidnapped and killed all those people. But
So
he was
there's this
deeply upset.
There's the
about it.
medical guy who's like, I used to be a gladiator, but after Russell Crowe. But we all talked about him because he was really cool.
Yeah,
and then
they
he's
have a
like,
little-
oh yeah.
Do you
And
want to
he's
see
like,
the
you want to
Russell
see our
Crowe
secret shrine that no one's ever found, despite the fact that I'm the only person that can even remotely walk free on this complex that isn't directly affiliated with the government. Despite the fact that everybody hates him in the government, we have a little basement where we got all this shit so that you can literally suit up.
It's a good.
You can have put on his fucking
His armor
costume.
that shrunk 30 sizes
Yeah,
for you.
and he lifts up the sword like It was kind of like when Rey goes to the basement of Maz Kanata's cantina, and she's like, for absolutely no reason, I have Luke Skywalker's lightsaber. Same vibe. Where the fuck did they get that shit? I thought like he died in the armor. I would think it'd be damaged, but it was perfectly battle ready. So then they go into the secret
impervious
basement.
to swords.
Yeah, and they were like cleaning it for 20 years and shit because it was like pristine, and they like mounted it to the wall and everything.
They wiped off all the blood. They sprayed it with the like derusting solution.
Yeah, the sword's been sitting in a musty basement for 20 years.
And it's just as sharp as the last battle.
So I guess the healer either the Romans like forgot about this room, or the healer in his spare time just like dug a hole or something.
I like how every character is somehow related to a legacy character. They're like Denzel Washington goes up to Russell Crowe's wife and he's like, I used to be your dad's slave. She's like, oh, that's wild.
I used to be my dad's kid, and you're the grandson, and this and that. Everybody has to be related to the core cast in one way or another. Yeah. The legacy sequel requirement that you're related to one of the main characters. Yep. And they kind of wanted to make it a mystery. Palpatine's daughter. Yeah, they kind of wanted to make it a mystery in this one.
I mean, to be fair, it caught me off guard because, like I said, I thought this was just an entirely different movie. And then all of a sudden they start playing scenes from the first movie and I'm like, what the fuck?
I mean, there's quite a bit of like off-kilter shit. I mean, like it looks good. The action's entertaining, despite the fact that CGI. I feel like Ridley Scott didn't have enough energy to like really want to do it. Like they didn't want to build a little coliseum and do
all the
miniatures
stuff
and shit. They didn't want to do all this stuff. So like any of the action scenes are shot in like an entirely green screen space with a bunch of dudes running around like it's a Lord of the Rings, like sliding down elephant trunks and shooting bow and arrows. Also, the bow and arrow is the most deadly weapon here because like it does not matter. Like in the middle of a battle at one point, Russell Crowe Jr. gets his hand on a bow and arrow and almost snipes the fucking kings from like a mile away, and it hits the board in between the two kings, and they're like, oh.
Yeah, and then Denzel snipes his mom from a million miles away.
Mom, and his wife,
Pedro Pascal, gets hit sniped 900 times.
Not a single arrow missed Pedro Pascal and hit Russell Crowe Jr.
And for some reason, even though
within arm's reach of each other, and everybody's shooting from
even though Russell Crowe Jr. refused to kill Pedro Pascal on the King's orders, they didn't shoot him. They're just like, okay, well, he can live and come back tomorrow for.
Well, yeah, he defies the Kings constantly. The Kings don't even seem that bad. Like the only thing is, at the start of the movie, they're like, we're gonna just conquer fucking everything. And then they're like, do you want to like conquer India for us or something? And then Pedro Pascal's like, no thanks. But then he's like, okay, you know what? Just overnight gonna have 5,000 totally loyal troops that aren't gonna sell me out. None of the 5,000 troops will sell me out. And then I'm going to basically take over Rome.
Well, I like how at the end of the movie, after Russell Crowe Jr. kills Denzel Washington, he gives a rousing speech to the Roman soldiers who are about to kill each other. There's Pedro Pascal's faction and the King's faction, and they're coming to have a big battle with each other, and Pedro Pascal, or fucking Russell Crowe's son, is just like, wouldn't it be nice if we didn't fucking kill each other? And then they're all like, yeah, I guess.
They're like, whatever.
And they just go home.
These fiercely loyal troops to one side or the other. And like all 6,000 troops had not only heard that Denzel staged a coup yesterday, but they're willing to like get in a war behind him. Like honestly, if I was them, I would have just like been like, okay, maybe we just kill Denzel Washington, because like what support did he have except the fact that he's second in command under a monkey because the schizophrenic
And he murdered
gay
both
twin.
kings.
And he murdered both kings.
He murders both kings, and then everyone's like, oh, I guess he's in charge.
Like in real life, I don't know if that was me. If I would stand in front of an army of 6,000 people, that sounds like a good way for someone to stab me in the back. Because usually what happens in those situations is there's just a bunch of coups until eventually someone like manages to hold it together and everyone's bored, so they stop fighting.
Or until enough people have died that there's no one left to fight, like the French Revolution.
Yeah.
The French Revolution, kind of epic.
Yeah, I mean...
Like when Robespierre said, let's just kill everybody, and then they killed him, and he was like, how could this have happened?
Well, part of the reason we lost the Vietnam War is because South Vietnam, America's like, okay, we really don't like the guy that we installed to be in charge, so we're just gonna, like, not stop you guys from holding a coup. And then they put some general in charge they liked, and they're like, this is great. And then he lasted like an hour, and then he got stabbed. And then, like, apparently within like 2 years, power had changed like 30 times, and new governments were installed.
Yeah.
And they're definitely the ones fighting the war, you know, we're just here on the assist, you know, it's just a conflict. I do like that when we were kids, this is off topic, but like, when we were kids, like, our schools would teach us that Vietnam was a conflict. Like, I think that's something they were trying to twist for a while when we, like, came out as, like, definitively the bad guys. And they're like, yeah, we were pretty bad, but it was just a conflict, bro. We're just conflicted. We're just conflicted in there.
That's the official government stance.
Yeah, no, I think, like, I don't know what the government calls it, but I feel like schools are like, yeah, this is a war. But, like, when we were kids, they're like, don't call it a war. It was just a conflict where, like, 40,000 Americans died in, like, a fuck time. We just destabilized the whole region.
Twice? Well, like, 9 times, but...
And kept installing, like, fascists over communists.
Hey, I mean... half of what we've done in the Middle East over the last 20 years has been conflicts.
Yeah, I mean, but the whole idea of the United States is we're like, this is a righteous war. Then after like 2 hours, it's like, okay, we're the bad guys. But
it's just a conflict.
They're like, just pull out, bro. And it's like, no, we gotta double and triple down, bro.
Like when we gave, like when we went to Afghanistan and said these guys suck, let's give it to those Mujahideen guys. And then the Mujahideen guys were like, hey, what if we renamed ourselves the Taliban? That was a good one.
Yeah, our allies, we allied with them, but after the rebrand, we weren't really fucking with their religious sensibilities anymore. Following 9/11, we just couldn't.
Yeah, we went our separate ways.
We parted ways on bad terms, and it is what it is, you know? Not every relationship ends good, you know? But anyways, back to Gladiator. Enough about American history. Let's talk about Roman history a bit.
Two very different topics.
Yeah, no, the story is fucking convoluted, but it's all in service of these set pieces. But I feel like they could have tightened up the story, since when you actually like think about the story for more than 2 seconds, it starts to like it's just a bunch of people existing and things happen. Which shouldn't be the case when you have a movie that's 40 minutes action and like an action movie that's 40 minutes action, 100 minutes talking, and the more they talk, the less the movie actually makes sense, and everything's just kind of like convoluted the whole time, and like no one's motives are clear because they're so busy trying to like hide really obvious twists in it.
Yeah.
But like I said, it's shot well. It's edited well, it looks well, the action's surprisingly good. I wish it was shot more practically, but that isn't what boomers directors do anymore. New Hollywood is, I mean, most of these guys are like 85, so like if they want to keep making movies, they're doing it from like a fucking rascal chair or something. With like, oops, what are you doing, buddy? He's a gladiator himself. The greatest challenge of all. Anyways, Obes has just decided he's the star of Drunkview, the third host.
Yeah, he's a good boy.
He's almost as bad as Luna. He's worse than Luna.
He's worse.
Luna was the old guest star. But Luna moved, and in went Obi, and now he's the new star. More specifically, his sphincter.
Yeah, I can't wait until Akuma starts leaving the room. He's gonna also do this shit.
Akuma waits by the door for you, and then he runs under the bed every time he sees it's not you.
I know. And if he sees it as me, he starts running between my legs until I pet him. He's a very
when are you gonna free that man?
I don't know. What am I supposed to do? He only likes me. It's not good.
He doesn't like Obi or anything.
He's scared of Jacko. He doesn't mind the others. He just stares at them. But I've been trying to get Grant in the room to see if he can get attached to Grant or something. Like, see if he'll be okay with anyone else. But he really likes me, and everyone else terrifies him.
Yeah.
Which is not a good sign for his adoptability, but I'll figure it out.
Hey, man.
Anyway.
Whatever, dude. Anyways, let's see. I think I'm done talking about this movie. I don't know.
Okay,
it's a legacy sequel. It's Gladiator again. It's very similar to Gladiator. If you liked Gladiator, it's probably worth watching in the theater once for Hux. But I think that is the legacy of Gladiator 2. Is if you kind of like Gladiator, you'll have fun. Watch it once for Hux, and then probably from now on you'll just continue watching the first one whenever you need your Gladiator fix. So Aiden, what did you think of Gladiator 2?
Yeah, we already went over what the story's a mess, and it is. Denzel is a very fun villain as the sassy, gay schemer man.
Everyone's good in the movie.
Everyone's good, but Denzel's very good. Denzel's very over the top and campy, and he's just hooking it up. But it works, even though his plan is like comically convoluted.
Yeah. I like the brothers, despite the fact that it's just Walking Phoenix times 2.
Yeah, it sure is. It sure is. Yeah, Denzel carries. He's very fun. As for everything else, once you get past the story, a lot of the action in this movie is fun and good. Like, it has some very well choreographed sword fights and stuff. It definitely gets ridiculous often. Like the little mini boat battle where Russell Crowe's son smashes all their oars and then jumps on the boat and steals a crossbow, and when he kills a rhino and all that other stuff. It's all very ridiculous and over the top, but in a fun way where you're like, oh, I wonder where this weird set piece is going to go. And it usually pays off. So the action is a lot of fun. When the movie stops being a mess. And the movie's fun when it's being a mess, but with Denzel Washington. And everyone else is good too, but they have much less presence than Denzel, who's kind of carrying. It's weird and convoluted. It's definitely a late-era Ridley Scott movie where it's just a weird collection of ideas that's well made.
Yeah.
Borders on nonsense, really, with how convoluted it is. But it is admittedly a good time despite all that.
Yeah, I think Ridley Scott today is what Francis Ford Coppola wants to be today. Which is, the movie's nonsense, but at least it has some really good technical aspects. Because Ridley Scott's never stopped being a good technical filmmaker, even in the shittier pieces he's
even
put
at the
out,
start,
usually
his movies were much less nonsense at the start, but he was always a very, very technical filmmaker.
Yeah.
And he remains so today, even if his movies have slipped into being nonsense. Anyway, I think we covered a lot of it when we talked about the plot, which is the big question mark of this movie. I still think it's fun, and it's definitely something to see in theaters because it does have some nice spectacle to it. It's definitely not going to shine as much on home video or streaming or whatever eventually, but it is fun despite how fucking strange it is.
Yeah.
So Connor, would you recommend Gladiator 2?
Yeah, I'd recommend Gladiator 2. Like I said,
My boy.
I like the first Gladiator movie, And this is basically that again. Lots of good action, lots of good performances. It does have more of a convoluted story. The same plot as like Independence Day Resurgence, where Daddy's dead, but I'm the new chosen one. I'm more boring, unnamed actor living in the shadow of Russell Crowe, or in Independence Day, Will Smith. But
or in The Force Awakens, literally everybody.
Yeah. It's one of those things where it's like, yeah, I mean, see it in theaters. I recommend, like, I think it's, in legacy sequel terms, it's more like Force Awakens than Last Jedi. It's more Jurassic World than the preceding two.
The Haunted House one.
Than the Haunted House one. It's more Halloween 2018 than Halloween Kills.
Yeah.
So, you know, it's one of those legacy sequels where it's the same thing but again. So you'll probably get a kick out of seeing it in theaters, but in 2 years, you'll just go back to watching the first Gladiator whenever you want to watch Gladiator.
Yep.
And this is a chance to kind of somewhat relive it, I guess, if you feel like it. So kind of, yeah, probably. If you like Gladiator, yes. Watch Gladiator first, because you can get the DVD for cheap. So Aiden, would you recommend Gladiator 2?
Yes, I think so. It's very odd, and the story's a mess, but it is fun. I had fun watching it, and definitely watch the first movie if you haven't, because there's a lot of shit that will be even more nonsense if you don't know what happens in that movie. This movie doesn't even really put in any attempt to catch you up. They're just like, there's once a guy named Maximus, and he was really cool. And you should watch the first movie if you want to find out about that.
There's like some vague flashbacks where it'll like go like they'll like go into the past. It'll be like a really weirdly like past filter thing where it's just Russell Crowe being like, "I'm not entertained," and then Joaquin Phoenix is standing there nodding his head, and it's like, okay, that's what you get. I've seen Gladiator like 2 or 3 times, and like to be real with you, like. I didn't know the mom was the character from the first movie.
I forgot.
You should probably, even if you've seen Gladiator, unless it's like your favorite movie and you really fucking are confident in the plot, you are going to have no idea the references or who was in it. Because at the end of the day, when it boils down, no one remembers anybody but Russell Crowe and Joaquin Phoenix. And the fact that they both were crazy in the movie. Well, Russell Crowe was stoic, Joaquin Phoenix was crazy.
Yeah, it's the opposite of real life.
Yeah. Yeah. And, yeah, so you probably want to brush up on your Gladiator knowledge, because I didn't realize it'd be important, because I thought this would be like an unrelated Gladiator film. They just got, Halloween's 3 type of situation.
Yeah, that's what I was expecting.
This is like an anthology of Gladiators. No, this is a sequel.
Yeah,
don't let it fool you. It doesn't matter that much, really, because at the end of the day, it's just like, you're his son. That's what matters. But
yeah, but the movie already borders on nonsense, so I guess it being slightly more nonsense if you haven't seen the first movie doesn't change that.
Yeah, I feel like the fact that the mom was in the first movie was a more surprising twist to me than the fact that he was Russell Crowe's son. Like, I was like, oh, she's in the first movie, because this is a part that flashes back to like her and Russell Crowe, and I was like, oh, well, I'll be damned. That might have been a little more satisfying. I was like, I just figured this bitch was Pedro Pascal's wife, and that's why she was in it.
Yeah, I saw her, like, when she's first introduced in this movie, there's like this big reveal shot where she turns around slowly with a cloak over her head, and I was like, who the fuck is that?
Yeah, it's not exactly like, Han Solo walking back in the Millennium Falcon, like, your wife lady in Gladiator. It's not Sigourney Weaver walking back on the alien ship and going, Xenomorph, we're home, or something like that, Yeah, we don't know who the fuck this bitch is. She's like some unknown actress, too. Like, not unknown, but like, She's a character actress. Like, I have no fucking clue who this is.
Yeah, it's not like
I didn't
it's
realize
not like,
she was important. It's just like, okay, I guess that's Pedro Pascal's wife, and we're.
It's not like she turned around and it was Kate Winslet or someone.
Yeah.
It was like some Australian character actress who was in the first movie for 10 minutes.
You know, it's not even like Liv Tyler. You know, you're like, oh, Steven Tyler's daughter. You know.
Yeah.
It's not like it was Ed Norton when he was in Alita Battle Angel for 2 seconds.
That was really fucking weird.
It's not like he's Robert Downey Jr. when he's going to drop his hood and say, I'm Doctor Doom now.
Yeah.
It's different than all those.
Yeah, it's a fun movie. It's very strange. It's late era Ridley Scott, but in a fun way. And not like a Napoleon way.
And just remember, it is a sequel.
Yeah, it's a legacy sequel. It's The Force Awakens.
It's not an anthology. It's a sequel.
It's The Force Awakens and Gladiator.
It's the same movie again, but it's also a sequel. It's one of those. It's a legacy sequel.
It's The Force Awakens.
It is The Force Awakens of Gladiator.
And you get to see all the things you recognize, like the tiger.
I actually am kind of amazed they didn't put in the "Are you not entertained?" line, because that's like the thing from Gladiator that everyone remembers. So yeah. I mean, he still had like 4 rousing speeches that they tried to make like compare to Russell Crowe's rousing speeches. The acoustics in that bitch must be crazy, because like everybody heard his rousing speech to like go up against the king or something. And he's like. Just got his fucking face beat in by Pedro Pascal and a bunch of other guys, and he's like, you know, he didn't have a microphone. There's like 1,000 people cheering, and somehow everyone heard him clearly. There ain't no Jumbotron in ancient Rome.